There is a military order that has outlasted all others in the present setting, bar the Necrons. Their pedigree and purpose are unequalled. When they arose, the Tau were barely making tools. They existed before the aspect warriors of the ancient Eldar, or the cabals and covens of the Drukhari. They predated the inception of the Sororitas, Astra Militarum, legions of the Space Marines, the Legio Titanica, the priesthood of Mars, even the Men of Iron, and the human navigators, Void Shield and Warp Drive. Their roll of honor is so long that none can fathom its scope, its depth, its richness. If one were to collate every record of every last act of valor, courage, self-sacrifice, and victory, then the annals would cover entire star systems. They are the truest representation of humanity's brightest, bravest, and best. For can an Astartes even truly be called a human any longer, let alone a man? Their heritage, their orders, can range back to the earliest days of humanity's quest to reach for the stars. For they were born of Earth, not terror. And by the time you have finished this record of their history, you will not just know them, you will respect them like no other. They're the oldest defenders of humanity. They are legends amongst men. They are the peerless. They are our knights. Welcome, gentle listener. I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the forces, factions, and faces of the Warhammer 40k setting. The grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace. There is only time for war. We shall now explore the history of this extraordinary force of warriors through short scenes that create the collage of a history. Each one will be followed by brief commentary to explain the situation and reactions presented. The hard lore, one might say. I have invented my own household and its history to help us focus the narrative, because, in my mind, Warhammer has always been about telling your own stories as much as absorbing and adhering to what is on wider display. So, you will not just be told, but can feel their struggle, their rich and sumptuous pedigree. Now, gentle listener, once more, I ask you to take my hand, and together, let us go all the way back through time to the very beginning. Permit me to guide you through what I see as a history and glory of Imperial Knights. From the Bold Library, the history of House Heinrich. Setting off. The year, circa millennium 18. The place, Earth. The Office of Colonial Administration. The door swung open, and in bustled a lithe man of middling years, holding multiple data pads. His unkempt, strain-whitened hair looked like a cloud, and his eyes darted around, finally resting on the man behind the desk. "Thanks for knocking. Come on in," sighed the senior official, sat in an ergonomically perfect hover chair, as he closed his screen and glared at the interloper. "This makes no sense. None of it," blurted the arrival peevishly, while dumping his pads on the desk and sitting in a vacant chair across from the office's owner. "The manifest space I've been allowed for the entire colony shows up at 20% less than the drive potential of this class of ship. One of my team stumbled across the specs. It went round the office like wildfire. And I dug a bit last night. I'm locked out of an entire section of the project. Me!" The senior man leaned back and sighed again, muttering, "May as well get this done. Morgan, we've got to talk." "I'm not going to enjoy this, am I?" Elbows now drawn up on the desk. The other man steepled his fingers in front of him and responded, It's best to deal with realities, Morgan.
We aren't getting constructors, are we? Said the visitor.
Oh, those are finished.
Then what?
The template. It's not there yet. Morgan's eyes widened as he leaned forward in shock.
How?
The administrator swept his hands out slowly and expansively as he intoned. Well, directed AI research is moving at quite a clip. A lot of progress, Morgan. A lot. The other man interrupted.
Ah, so they can't draw a line?
Shaking his head, the senior continued. Nope. You know committees. Every advance sets back the agreement on the template.
But they have a partial one at least,
ventured Morgan. Well, something. But it's no more advanced than when we initiated this batch project.
No.
Yeah. So I'm now authorized to extend your requisition by 10%, factoring in the existing data only. But that's a princely sum, my friend. Morgan sat back in his chair, clearly calculating what more he could do with such an expanse. Then his eyes thinned.
John, when were you going to tell them? The travellers?
As late as possible. But we have secondaries for each position, each place. Morgan, this is the way it's been done for centuries. They can do it again.
It's not what they were promised.
It'll be more of a challenge, I grant you. But it'll work out if they have the right stuff. Morgan's eyes narrowed again as he spat.
10%? What about the rest?
Here it is. Confusion washed over Morgan's face. Then it hardened as his hands slapped down on the table between the two, and he growled.
You wouldn't. You did. You agreed to it.
I had no choice, Morgan. I cannot authorize a toothless colony. The walkers also help in the construction and clearing.
You were going to say it, weren't you? The old propaganda. They increased colony survival up to 12.6%. You sold out.
Morgan, it's not what we wanted, but without the templates. Morgan now stood and paced, spoke as if before a crowd, an old habit from his activist, rebellious phase.
We know the other side of that argument. If you show a weapon, you invite a fight. You know this, John, damn you.
The administrator waited for a moment, then pointed at the chair. Morgan held his gaze for a fleeting second, then sat heavily. Morgan, when you become a project head, they show you things.
What?
The true stats. And why.
Am I supposed to know this?
No, nobody is. So you don't either.
But you'd spill to win an argument.
No. I'll spill so I can retain your respect, your trust. I didn't want to burden you. I've seen hollow reels.
You can see anything, be shown anything. It doesn't make it true.
Yes, Morgan, it does. It can. The administrator looked into the distance, blank, haunted.
So?
Broken from his reverie, the administrator answered. Yes, sorry. Colonial survival is not as high as we are led to believe. The bureaucracy has been less than forthcoming.
Stop dancing.
Okay. Yep. We've bumped into a new species. Some new species.
How many?
Enough.
And?
They're not all friendly, Morgan.
Oh. But...
I'm sorry, Morgan.
But...
No. Trust me. I've witnessed things. Lost transmissions from colonies.
Oh.
The universal brotherhood of sentience is.
I understand. It's a fairy tale. I was so certain. We all were.
Perhaps one day, maybe we are the ones to help usher it in. Looking distraught, Morgan looked at his hands for a moment.
Oh, John, not yet. Give me some time. Give me some time.
Of course, said the administrator softly as he leaned back in his chair again, as if this motion would give his colleague a moment to himself somehow. Still looking at his hands, Morgan whispered,
10%, though, of the higher manifest. That's a lot.
I know. 20 walkers, plus support. His head finally came back up. Morgan looked quizzical, but not combative.
Support?
UP model military grade AI, and the staff for the walkers, of course.
Oh.
Yeah. Plaintively he asked.
Did you get to vet them at least?
I did.
Do I get to see the list and reasoning?
It wouldn't help.
It's likely they'll be secluded for generations, John. You could doom this entire new culture to tyranny.
I've done my best, Morgan. I've tried to balance things, attempted to weed out the most obviously autocratic candidates. And they'll have the colonial constitution. Morgan now pinched the top of his nose while closing his eyes.
Which will last about a decade at most, if there are wolves amongst the flock.
We can't control everything. We're not gods, Morgan.
But that many?
Morgan, if you'd seen what I've seen, know what I know, it's much safer and better for them to have and not need. Resigned to reality, Morgan dropped his fingers from the bridge of his nose and looked back to the administrator.
So that last high-profile placement is for their commander?
No. Someone is going to help things along.
Can I know who?
Morgan, can you honestly keep this under your hat?
Yes. This once, I will keep my mouth shut.
About?
All of it. This is your problem, John.
I wholeheartedly agree.
So, who is it?
Me. Morgan's eyebrows flew up so far they near disappeared within his cloud-like white hair.
Oh.
So never question my decisions again, Morgan. I have more invested in this than anyone.
We still have a year left, and you know I can be, well, difficult,
began Morgan. I'd have said driven, interjected the administrator, but I heed your sentiment.
Thank you. In case the strain of the deadline clouds my vision, I want to say this now. John Franklin Heinrich, I am going to miss you.
The Long March ships were sent out during the Age of Terror, from today all of the way up to the 15th millennium. This period is lost to the sands of time. So much is pure conjecture, no matter how well reasoned. But merely getting to this point was not easy. Humanity had to develop the infrastructure of Earth, and that would mean resolving all of our differences and bringing order and peace to the whole globe. And that, I think we can agree, would take quite some time. We then needed to explore our own solar system, set up many mining and resource extraction processes that permitted the construction of huge colony ships. We made sure we understood not only in-system travel, but the potential dangers and challenges of interstellar travel. Invented drives that will far exceed anything we know of today, because at sublight speeds and without access to the warp, the distances we would need to travel would be utterly insurmountable and preclusive. History, as has been proven so many times even in acknowledged timelines, has shown that humanity does not eternally march forward. There are periods of intellectual and population contraction, planet-wide disasters, pandemics and catastrophes which epitomize the old idiom, 1 step forward and 2 steps back. There is also rare evidence in the setting that perhaps the warp was discovered in the 3rd millennium, and that may have been the cause of some delay. I reference to Chainsword Warrior, of course, but this is a tangent we should not explore today. In any case, the Long March ships were constructed and sent out into the void. Some were known as generation ships, where the populace was still awake, would lead their lives, breed and pass their time maintaining their vessel almost like a craft world. They set off in the full awareness that it would be their descendants who would make planetfall and raise colonies. Of course, many were destroyed in transit for a myriad of reasons. Accidents and collisions with undetected objects or anomalies, civil strife, incompetence, ignorance, or simple willful nihilism. The list is potentially endless, for we humans are not easy to predict. Yet some of these vessels did indeed reach their destinations. The easier and more economic method was the cryogenically frozen ships. Far fewer resources would be required, less variables of human interaction and reaction were in play, and they would have been able to move at higher speeds, not having entire segments of the ship devoted to gravity, atmospheric and horticultural concerns. Protected in their deep freeze pods, the human colonist cargo could withstand greater strain. In either scenario, no matter the type of ship, they landed on the colony planet and were designated to be the initial home of the colony, a hard point from which to expand out later. Now there are issues with this period, as a question of artificial intelligence beings or genetically altered or bred humans has arisen, but this again is a sideline that is not fundamental nor concretely explored enough within the lore to my satisfaction. The fable of the men of gold, iron and stone. Just know that there are a plethora of details I am not ignoring, but choosing to gloss over for brevity. And as we all know by now, the galaxy of the setting is inimical to human life. Simply getting to the star system was only the beginning of the trial. Planet-side natural disasters could have occurred in transit, meaning that the world targeted for colonization was far from the idyllic projection made before launch, and humanity was not the only species in the galaxy. The Orcs and Eldar are known all too well, but before the Great Crusade, there were hundreds of active Xenos, or alien species. Few would welcome a strange, near-derelict ship containing a horde of unknown beings arriving in their space, let alone heading towards the world to share it. Nor were the planets wholly scanned, catalogued, or categorized at this time. It is just as likely that flora and fauna, or megafauna, would be deadly enough to annihilate a colony on landing, if not in their first years of living there. The walkers we now know as knights were used to support heavy construction and clear land of debris or foliage, patrol and neutralize threats, be they simple animalistic megafauna that could develop a taste for human flesh, or intelligent life that was ready to defend their lands by exterminating the new arrivals. And of course, many colonies would have early models of what became the Men of Iron, the artificial intelligences that defended humanity on the small scale. Robotic sapient sentinels, the very first allies of humanity. But what is a knight? The early knight chassis, which were being sent out with the Long March ships, and most likely merely dubbed walkers back then, stood at approximately 30 feet, or about 9 meters, constructed of ultra-dense steel and adamantium. It is not known for certain if they always had ion shields, or if this was a later addition and upgrade. Ion shielding was a field projected from a very advanced system that did not protect the entire knight, like the ubiquitous bubble of force seen in so many sci-fi settings. It was directional and almost universally pointed forward, emulating a shield, like that of an ancient warrior. It deflected, or at the very least reduced, the kinetic energy in a physical attack, radically reducing the effectiveness of shooting attacks on it. With the armoured plating that surrounds the most crucial regions and systems of the vehicle, a knight could endure volleys of firepower that would eviscerate or punch straight through even Land Raider armour. But they did not have the kind of protection granted by the more potent and later developed void shields of the Titans. Now those are indeed the standard stock bubbles that protect from near any attack from nearly any angle. Thus, the knights had to be far more experienced and swift if they were to be able to survive the battles of their time. A lackluster or green pilot of a knight could not only be the end of his walker, but would then form gaps in the line that would likely mean the destruction of the entire formation. Truly, only the best of the best could find themselves in the battle line of the knightly orders, and screening for such candidates could be every bit as exacting, if not quite as lethal or brutal, as those required to become a space marine. The Night Walker has an array of weaponry that would not be out of place on smaller ships or emplacements, the chassis being strong enough to carry such weaponry into the middle of the fray. Also, the power requirements for the majority of the direct energy weaponry of various forms could only be generated by the fusion reactors of such a beast. Thus the knight was able to dish out building-flattening firepower, but if damaged or destroyed outright, they were often as dangerous to their allies in close support. A fusion core going up would cause a detonation comparable to a tactical nuclear device, if not worse. Hence, distance between the knights was not only understandable, it was necessary. And woe to any infantry or armour in its proximity. Even so, their utility in combat far exceeded the dangers, as long as the pilots and their leadership were experienced. Later models would vary in size, some being much larger and going up to 60 feet, and subsequently made of the more durable plasteel, a component element synthesized during the age of technology, and their weaponry's lethality matched their increased size and scope. But I do not wish to bog down this entry, so we shall explore many of the models and their unique artifacts of war in the future. There is some contention about the history of the knights, as many have identified the more recent lore, stating that they came from STC, or Standard Template Construct technology, which was developed later, during the early to mid-period of the Age of Technology. My contention is that, of course the STCs contain knight designs, for they were a record of all human knowledge, but some tracts state the knights were on the Long March ships, which definitely predated the STC. Some view the knights as a miniature Titan, and that they were developed at approximately the same time. With no derision, I simply cannot agree. The Titans are not just bigger knights, although they have many similarities. The difference is not just in size, it is in scope, and there is a true benchmark of difference in the technology required to make a knight, even a scout model, as ludicrous as it seems to use that word when concerning the god engines of war. The first Titan is firmly placed in the time of the high period of the Age of Technology, which is usually agreed to have begun in circa the 16th millennium. And they were proven to be blueprinted from an AI form, because the Imperium later unearthed this first Titan. And it was so far from what the Mechanicum pushed out later as to be the difference between a Homo sapiens and a Homo erectus. Factors more potent. In the future, I will go far more in depth concerning the makes, models and armament of these beasts of war, but today we explore their heritage to set the scene for this future run. I feel we should know their history before we can hope to enjoy and appreciate the minutiae of their effectiveness and abilities. But back to the colony. With so many variables in play, so many dangers and ways they could fail, the perspective of humanity back then was totally different to that of the grim darkness of the 41st millennium. We were a young and naive race, and charged out into the galaxy with wide eyes and high hopes, an attitude that would soon change. Even when they had landed and raised a banner of humanity on a world, that was only the beginning. Thunderous applause. The place Colony 1345, 327 years after launch from Earth. Another office, but no ergonomic chair, just a simple but sturdy four-legged affair. Administrator John Heinrich was showing his fatigue as he looked out at the heavily built soldier across from him, the uniform pristine, back straight, and glare piercing. John Heinrich was passive, but his jaw needed to unclench before he responded. "We seem to be prospering right here." "Oh, that we are, Coordinator Heinrich. But for how long?" "We're using titles today, Colonel Bastian." "Over this? I speak to you in my capacity. I expect you to respond in kind." "You're making a mountain out of a—" "No, not this time, Coordinator. You've sandbagged for years. We've been here nearly a decade, and we have no access or information concerning the northern continent. None. Or so I am led to believe. There's 100 miles of ocean between us and them." The colonel leaned forward, his face contorted into a snarl as he spat. "Them?" The coordinator subconsciously sat back, creating distance between the two men as he raised his eyebrows and looked to the side, dismissively waving a hand as he said, "A slip of the tongue." "I think not. So that's why you've refused me access to the feeds?" John Heinrich slowly returned his hands to the armrests of his chair, gripping them tightly below the desk as he thinly smiled at the colonel. "No, I've refused access, as a mapping of this world is a civic matter, not martial. Yet none of your recon drones have returned. I think there is no electromagnetic interference. I think you've purposefully kept me in the dark. After all we've been through, you don't trust me. Trust is earned and reciprocated. You show none in me, and I've waited long enough, given you ample opportunity to volunteer the information. You were the best man at my marriage. You're my son's guardian. How much more trust can I give you? Enough to be honest with me. It's the least I deserve, John. I have a job to do, Francois. So do I. And you are preventing me from doing it, which is at best arrogant at worst. Heinrich's face fell as he responded. Do tell. Treason. Dangerous words. You are not in charge here. You serve, as we all do. I could take this to the house. You'd be laughed out of it. Maybe, maybe not. But you aren't getting any younger. Nor are you. The youths, Heinrich. They see things my way. Yes, I notice you've capitalized on the adverse fauna to drive our colony in a very interesting direction. Exactly how many of us do you want out there, clearing screechers? They volunteer. Who am I to stop men defending their land? Expansion requires clearance. Clearance requires we deal with the threats. And that requires I train them. Would you have me send out botanists and engineers without the skills to defend themselves? And do you think I'm oblivious to your little evacuation muster point? That you've kept it hidden from even the UR support cohort? To the oaths, Colonel. Building a personal army. Incorrect, Administrator. They swear fealty to the colony. It gives them pride, purpose. It's what they need if they are to face screechers. And perhaps some of them will eventually be sentient enough to command a walker. It's not for everyone, Coordinator. We need to maintain or even expand pilot numbers. You cannot just jump into a walker. It takes discipline, focus. I give them that focus. But they swear to the military, and by extension, you. I am not the military. Nor I the administration. Nobody believes that. Nobody. Nor I about you. John Heinrich, you aren't wandering me up the same old path. This is deflection. The feeds. Now. Or I will take this to the House. The masses who defend you will be adamant you can do no wrong. So I'll ask you to show the feed records to all live at the same time, to dispel argument and clear your name. Ha. Some might even support it to silence me. But you know this vote will pass, and I know you don't want that to happen. The administrator's shoulders slackened as he sat back in his chair and sighed. Touché, Francois. Now, John. On one condition. Name it. We discuss this. My counteroffer. Shoot. We discuss this as equals. Accepted. If we keep this between us. Done. With a flick of one control, the doors gave off the locking chime. Between the two men, a holographic display lit up, and images formed. One followed another, but the general pattern was of a similar vein. Large humanoid beings running across the plains of the north, or languishing in ramshackle huts. When a drone was spotted, they would reach for handheld primitive ballistic weapons and fire up at it, most often laughing raucously. Their accuracy was pitiful, as if they did not aim at all, just sprayed and prayed to hit. But so many of them did this that the drones went down. The animalistic things guffawed and ran to where the drone fell, stomping on any that still sent visual or auditory feed, until they went dark. Through it all, Colonel Francois Bastien was unflinching, emotionless as he watched the feeds. Finally, when the last had played its course and flickered off, he slowly turned his attention back to the coordinator. Though he gave no visible sign, Heinrich could sense the waves of animosity coming from him. That was Species 36. We can't be certain. We don't have to be sure of it. The threat is huge. Administrator, you are unfit for the position. How could you hide this, let alone for this much time? They could fall on us like an avalanche. Francois, they aren't a threat yet. Their technology is late industrial at best. But took out our drones. How many? Some. Equals John. A dozen. So, they know we are here. They know something is here. If they ever stop fighting each other to remember the fact. You've been watching them for how long? About 2 years now. You bastard. They've never shown interest in us. There are no ruins indicating they have ever migrated to this continent. They're idiots. They aren't a threat. This isn't a civil decision, and you know it. Species 36 has destroyed more colonies than any other. Why? Because just as many colonies have been destroyed by internal conflict. It appears that, when things get tough, we are not as evolved as we thought. If we go down the road you could drag us, we're as much a danger to each other as the aliens. So, you prevented militarization for the good of all. So many diatribes and lectures about being one amongst many, merely the voice of the colony, not its master. The House will eat you alive. Only if you tell them. But do consider this. How would you prevent a psychopath from marching us into tyranny if you got rid of me? The precedent will be set. Ousting leadership. You'll then be looking over your shoulder, hunted for the rest of your days. And you aren't getting any younger either. What happens when you have to pass on the mantle of command? We've both seen the same reports, the same socio-demographic trends. So what then? Colonel Bastien ground his teeth as he considered. He still glared at the coordinator, but there was a softening in his eyes. You see, it's not so simple now, is it? I have the solution, but you won't like it. Don't tell me. I stepped down. Stress? No, something more lasting. I have an accident. I know you're under a lot of strain. This must have haunted you for years. But, John, that was offensive. Conceded. I'm sorry, Francois. You aren't wrong. This has been my worst-case scenario. I simply don't see a pathway that doesn't destroy everything we hold dear. Our entire colony, our culture. It hangs in the balance. And finally, I can help you, old friend. We do this together. What is your answer? Your son. My daughter. An arranged marriage? That's barbaric. No, it's necessary. You want to construct a de facto monarchy. We both know how that ends up. No, I want to consolidate our position in the only way possible for the good of all. If you won't let me militarize, which I concede has its downside, then we have to prepare. The administrative and military wings both need to know for the future to prepare. But I agree, this cannot get out. So we set up our children as future rulers. Really? I know it's off the cuff, but this is your best plan? The colony was designed to adhere to the Constitution, which was written by high-minded idealists. It's easy to be ethical while loafing about in paradise, but the ideas were good. We both agreed to them. We can instill them in our children. Or anyone's. No, John Heinrich. In times of total war, the populace must have one voice, one purpose, one light to lead the way. We know our children are stable. Others may not be. We cannot trust them. Yet we ask the populace to trust us. Listen to yourself. Pot, kettle, black, John. This changes everything. Species 36 are the worst possible adversary. They multiply like flies. They cannot be negotiated with, cannot cohabit. They are a cosmic cancer. If it is species 36, then we dare not gain their attention. Not until we are ready. We will need to build our numbers radically, instill a civic duty to reproduce far in excess of previous guidelines and social mores, and that will take generations. But we cannot get ready without raising suspicion, and then it's inevitable. It'll get out. What then? A madman could oust us both, or the future house, and take over. Lead a preemptive strike that would elicit 36 searching every inch of this world for us. Then, they'll wipe out every last human on this planet. We're screwed. Unless you agree to my proposal, we join our lines. When they are ready, we confide in them. Someone has to shoulder this burden, to know to move as fast as possible while alerting none. We may not even pull it off, but then we won't be around to see the final results. But we have to give them a fighting chance, John. What if the members of the House sense our intent and take against them? Move to prevent the instilling of a blatant monarchy. If it was either of us, would we not do the same? You overestimate people. Your kind of academic always does. Nobody asks questions when things are going well, which they will continue to do if we are careful. We support each other, draw attention to good deeds, groom our children for responsibility, while entrenching familial authority. We make them the only logical choice. We have to try. And if I refuse, I will have to go to the house. You'd do that. What choice would you give me? The administrator now slowly nodded. I suppose, from what I have seen, they already like each other. Proximity does that in the young. Yes, it does. I'll train your boy. He'll be a fine man by the time I've finished. I'll extol his virtues, put him front and centre. When the time comes, he'll be ready. And I shall take your daughter under my wing. She's bright, amiable, and popular. She'll take to it easily. Dinner. My place, then yours, weekly. And we keep them so busy, they won't have a chance to fraternize with others. Is that really necessary? When the colony is at stake? The administrator slowly shook his head, closed his eyes. I cannot believe I'm saying this, thinking it. But you are, because we have no other options. I wish I could find a counter. Anything. The colonel stood. We're traditionalists in my household. You probably think it's quaint, but consider this. It will be the name Heinrich, not Bastion, that resounds throughout history. Amelia and my daughter like to eat at sunset. Administrator John Heinrich watched him, then shrugged. He stood and offered his hand, and the colonel shook it. Then I, Susan, and Hubert will join you tomorrow at sunset. Alas, some modern models predict that any population base over 500 human souls will inevitably change from a tribal familial existence, transforming, be it swiftly or by regular increment, into a more structured organization. And in most organizations, it is the ruthless or psychopathic that will eventually win out. Or so we believe at the time of the writing of this entry. Simply put, when you have less than 500 people in a community, every individual is needed and potentially respected for their unique contributions to the greater whole. The more there are of us, the less value for any one amongst the congregation. When there is less respect and need, truly dark and dire things begin to happen, for the human connection is lost, and then anything is possible, no matter how evil. If a colony retained its technology and culture, they may well thread the needle and adhere to the high hopes of the first colonists, but often they would devolve into more brutal, stratified regimes. Much as our modern sensibilities may bemoan the humanity, some threats can only be met with a cohesion and vision that is enforced, dictated by autocracy. And with centuries of travel between colonies and Earth, there would be no way to call out for support or salvation to the rest of humanity. The distances travelled at sublight pre-warp speed meant that the colony was truly on its own. Yet some colonies out there in the dark of the void would thrive, the fighting spirit of humanity giving them strength to match the woes they faced and conquer them. A last throw of the dice. A bright morn, a moment of consequence. On the northern continent, arrayed on the fields of Gormonton, a man barely approaching his middle years rode his walker to the front of the congregation. He turned to look out upon the mustered martial might. Pennants fluttered in the wind. Scores of walkers filled his vision. Thousands of troops stood at the feet of the mighty weapons of war. All waited. They waited for him. Behind him was a sprawling collection of mismatched walls and barricades. Behind those bulwarks stood the smouldering remains of near countless smaller, rough habitation buildings. No two were the same, and none was unscathed by the barrage that had been launched at them over the last week. The carnage, both in metal and flesh, had been like nothing they had endured before. None on either side of this confrontation had ever witnessed its like. An entire world's worth of artillery munitions had been flung at them. Even so, there was still massed movement on the walls, many tens of thousands behind the defences, all preparing for the onrush of the forces collected before their walls. Species 36 did not even have a word for surrender. Truth be told, all knew that they somehow enjoyed the process, even in defeat. The one man opened the communications on his walker to full. All would be able to hear him. "We have fought them for 150 years, since the day of revelation. But now, finally, it ends. On this day, exactly 150 years since the moment of revelation, we face our final battle. For 7 generations have we waged war on the enemy. Countless human lives have been used in this, our ultimate struggle, our ultimate test. For 7 generations have we been born, been trained, been sent out to the killing fields. For 7 generations have we faced insurmountable odds, faced unbearable hardships, faced total annihilation. For 7 generations have we endured through selfless sacrifice, through unshakable determination, through incomparable bravery. On this day, we bring an end to our enemy, or to our very lives. Before me, I see the flower of our kind, the very best of what humanity can ever hope to be. I see my uncles, my cousins, my bannermen, my friends. Before me, I see all that can wield the weapons of war, all that can face the enemy unbowed. I see before me the greatest warriors humanity has ever produced. Behind us are the greatest victories of all time. The beachhead of Bringdal, where we began the claiming of the northern landmass. The fields of Ashenor, where we slew them for 3 days of unending slaughter. The Cardamine Heights, where we rooted them out of their oldest mountain fastness. The Campaign of Ice, where we repelled their sneak attack across the pole. Battles beyond number have we fought against the green-skinned filth, but they too have laid us low. The massacre at Marandau, the folly of Prince Peter, the rout at Rutherforn. We have used cunning and craft to clear the very air of their vile spores. We have bent our backs to build our numbers of walkers, our animated allies. We have sacrificed entire lines to the rapaciousness of war. Over the course of this battle, this confrontation, twice the enemy has brought us to our knees, near wiped us out. But now we stand once more. Many have questioned my wisdom. Many have thrown calumny before my door. Many have spat on the honour of House Heinrich. But I will have an end to this horror. On this day, 300 years since we landed on this world, exactly 150 years since the truth was revealed to us, we bring every last cohort of the animated, every last phalanx of bondsmen and bladesmen, every last walker of war. If we should lose, if we fail this day, the enemy horde will roll over the world, killing and consuming all. Not one man, woman, or child will survive. Yet, if we should win this day, our people will be relieved of the crushing yoke of eternal conflict, will be freed from the tyranny of unending terror, will be saved from their dire destiny of darkness. On this day, We must fight like we have never fought before. On this day, we reclaim what was promised to us on Earth. We forge our bright future. In the name of honor, courage, and survival, follow me, High Lord of House Heinrich. Follow me to death or eternal glory. No hesitation, no retreat, no mercy. With that, High King Heinrich raised his chain blade in the air, revving it thrice before the charge. And behind him was the full fury of his entire people. As one, the last and greatest army of humanity this world had ever seen, began their last battle against Species 36. At day's end, only 1 in 4 walkers remained. Only 1 in 5 bondsmen, bladesmen or automated, was left standing. But the threat of Species 36 had finally been removed from the face of the planet. Not 1 greenskin remained alive. Not 1. On worlds where there were indigenous enemies or to humanity, the battles against the aliens could well mean a transformation of the society. Where modern war is most usually about resources, the goal being to dominate the enemy population and access their skills or the minerals or location they have, there is no war as intense or as savage as that of pure survival versus an enemy who wishes nothing but your total extermination. In these circumstances, anything or anyone that does not assist in the war will be left behind or neutralized. In this way, many of the colonies would become feudal in structure, if not devolving down to the feral. But let us push on, for this period of separation did not last. Lost sheep. A usually hunched man shuffled into the reception room and walked very quickly towards the throne.
"Contact, my Lord Heinrich."
"Numbers?" said the older man, sat on the throne.
"1, my lord. It just appeared mid-system."
"Odd. Origin?"
"Unknown, but it has ignored our colonies on Celestial 2 and 4. It is heading directly towards us, right here."
"Inform Lady Heinrich immediately. Power all Polis defense shields. Prepare planetary artillery. Awaken the household and the host."
"Before we confirm, my lord?"
"Be they friend or foe, we do not sit when we meet another. We stand."
"It shall be as you command, my Lord Heinrich."
High King Heinrich walked with his guards and quickly went down to the loading bays. There he saluted the 500 knight pilots standing beside their walkers. They had always been ready. Ranks of animated robots filed out of the Bastille in front of the knights, and as one, they followed their lord out onto the plains. A voice came over the comms just to the king. "My lord."
"Speak." "The ship slows as it approaches. Strange readings. A stranger message, my lord."
"Explain."
"It is advanced, but it contains Earth identification algorithms."
"This could be a ruse."
"Aye, my lord, but..."
"But nothing. Lock onto them as soon as they are within range."
"It shall be as you command."
"If they are human, they will understand our message. Send it clearly. They come down in Sector 2-3, or we fire." The High King then marched out to the edge of the range of the Citadel's polished shielding, and waited. It was not long before a single very advanced shuttle came down, but a few 100 meters before him. It landed perfectly, as if gravity meant nothing to it, and down came a gangplank, and out walked a delegation of humans. High King Heinrich disembarked from his knight and then walked through the ranks of troops before him. They moved out of his way, so it was seamless, as he then strode straight towards the delegation, alone. The delegation of humans stood calmly, collected, but with smiles on their faces. Heinrich did not know if they were plastered on or if they were genuine. As he finally approached them, he stopped as one of them spoke. "We assume you are an ambassador for your colony. We are elated to meet you." "I am no ambassador. I am Heinrich. I command." "Then we are deeply honored indeed. We come with a simple message, which is, you survived through the years of solitude. We see your colonies. You have thrived. In this sector, that is a rare occurrence indeed. We will discuss your history later. For now, you need know only one thing. Humanity has discovered the warp drive. We now traverse the galaxy at speeds previously unfathomable. We come and go at will. We have so much to tell you, so much to give you. You are welcomed back into the Federation of Man." The next hours were a whirl of pomp and pageantry, feasts and toasts. All were overjoyed at the news. It was only in the morning that the delegation's head officers met with the king in private. "I hope the celebration was to your liking." "Astonishingly so. Your culture is rich and vibrant, High King. Last night we perused your historic data logs. Impressive indeed." "As are yours," said the High King. "It seems you are building a paradise across the stars." "Yet." "You are concerned. Speak your mind fully, Administrator." The king looked oddly at them. "Our apologies, High King Heinrich. Please ask your questions." "Our traditions are not up for debate. We have held the line for millennia. We will not bend the knee to you any more than we did to aliens. What place will my people have in such a world as you are building?" The two visitors looked to each other and smiled, then back at the king. "Ah, of course. Do not be concerned. The Human Federation is no empire. We do not dominate nor dictate. You will become equals amongst many. Trade, science, culture, all are to be given or exchanged. We forced nothing on any." "But what of my warriors? Our household? Our ways?" "Again, we do not ask any to disarm. That would be ill-advised. Despite humanity's inarguable strengths, it seems there will always be those who refuse to align with our beliefs of peaceful coexistence. And if you choose, your walkers and your warriors can be of great use to the greater Federation. When and where you choose, should you deign to fight against our collected enemies. What was designated as Species 36, your enemy of old, is near ubiquitous across the stars. We now call them orcs. We have still not managed to discern their origin point, or how they are so prolific, despite their barbaric simplicity. Nor are they the only threat. Any species seem incorrigibly fascinated with being annihilated by the armies of humanity. You will stand among warriors of worlds not so different to your own, with codes not so different. The Federation never starts a confrontation, but we always end them. To do this most effectively, we utilize our greatest assets, and the Federation would be honored to count your people and their walkers as part of those efforts. In that case, I think we can forge a deal. Just you wait. You are in for a treat. Many. Pray tell, what would that be? We have standard template constructs for you, a database of all of human knowledge. I thought they were just a myth. Well, they were, but now they are a glorious reality. And you would give this freely, without tether or condition? Why? You are humans. This is your birthright. The king nodded. So be it then. We also see you have the old UP animated AI models. We can upgrade them to the UR0 range. You will find this augments your strength greatly. And Titans, King Heinrich. You will get to fight alongside Titans. Circa Millennium 16 through to Millennium 25, humanity was at the very zenith of its technological achievement. This was indeed the golden age of technology, yet due to events that followed, the denizens of the Imperium are brought up from cradle to grave to believe there is an inherent threat from boundless rampant technological progress. As we shall see later on, it is not without cause. So they call this period the Dark Age of Technology. But whatever you call this era, there was an expansion in all directions, philosophical, technological, and genetic. The key elements that defined the early period of this era was the discovery of the warp, that other dimension that contains the demonic and dark gods, but it is also a twisted mirror of real space. There the rules of physics mean nothing, so traversing the warp allows a ship to move in that realm to the spot which corresponds with its equivalent in real space, then return to the normal universe. Yet, because of the lack of rules, the speeds performed are staggering. Entire armadas can take only weeks to go distances that would previously have taken thousands of years. In this way, the human race sent out explorers to find their old colonies and check on them. If they survived, then they would be brought back into the Human Federation, if they so chose. Of course, the vast majority did. It was an era as close to a pristine, positive vision of the future to match, say, the halcyon dreams of the Star Trek universe. Enlightenment was the goal, commerce its backbone, and progress its weapon. The human race fought endlessly, but it was very few races that wished to continue a confrontation with the Federation. Alas, even when the Eldar would not wish to cross swords with the Federation, there were always races so belligerent that they could not help themselves. Orcs are just one example. With constant advance, the keys to wonders we would consider sorcery were unlocked. Manipulation and even travel through time itself. Weapons that could shunt an object into the future or past, overlaying it on the current version, so that the two could not coexist. A ship would thus be destroyed, torn apart, by being transplanted onto itself. Boom. And of course, genetic manipulation made adjusting humans possible, so that we could tinker about and forge entire strains of beings able to not only survive, but thrive in near any environment. The navigator gene was discovered or created, and travel through the warp was made even more efficient. Later, warp abacuses threatened the dominance of the navigators, but that technology was later lost. Throughout all of this, the knight households upheld their traditions, arms, skill, and utility, being deployed in reaction to the aforementioned belligerent species of the galaxy. Yet, to everything its time, and all good things. Old Night beckoned. Circa Millennium 26. Revolution. Alarm bells that had not tolled in an age now screamed their alert throughout the palace. Everywhere was bathed in the red light all who held rank knew to be the colour of battle. High King Heinrich bolted from his bed, dragged on a robe, and was half tying it before the door burst open. Still in the flush of youth, he was lightning fast. His fingers clenched around a pistol he whipped from a side panel, aiming it at whatever came through the door. He did not squeeze the trigger, as he recognized his bodyguard headed by the vizier he had known all his life. The sounds of screaming and gunfire echoed up from the levels below. "Ablan, what the hell is going on? Has that honorless cur, Barlatan, finally made his move? A sneak attack? The household will never condone this base cowardice." The older man strode to the High King and put his hands on the young man's shoulders. He locked eyes with him and spoke. "You must listen. We have no time." No honorific. The look in Ablan's eyes. The king absorbed all. Mere hours ago, a ship came from the Mandeville Point, and we were instantly cut off from all communications with the colonies. There was a launch. The nucleonics there were expended. All of them. The targets were our own cities. The colonies are gone. The young king's eyes widened, but he did not interrupt. "I suspect our world has been spared this fate due to our production facilities and resources, but we are in no less danger. The animated cohorts have joined the revolt. They are assailing every region of the palace. They spare none. Most floors are already overrun. Your line seemed to be their primary target. You must fight your way to the walkers. The honor guard still holds the bays, but they cannot last. You will escape this place, and then regroup with any other knights, and then wage war. But now, my king, you must leave. Without you, the spine of our people will snap." The sounds of combat and firing were getting closer. "You have one question before we move. Speak now." "Ablan, the nursery, the queen. They are on the lower level." Vizier Ablan closed his eyes and shook his head slowly. A single tear rolled down his cheek. His eyes then snapped open again as Ablan removed his hands from the young man's shoulders, and he placed a disintegrator pistol in his lord's grasp, whispering to the High King Heinrich, "This is all that works on them. You know this. We live for revenge. Now, you move. You must give the order." King Heinrich kissed the side of the disintegrator pistol and wheeled on his guards. "We head for the bays. No hesitation. No mercy." He then rushed towards a wall and slapped a segment. A secret passage opened. Before he could move, a half-dozen of his guards charged within. The other half covered the door, waiting for him to enter. He looked to Ablan, who stood facing the door. "Come!" The sounds of fighting were now coming from the end of the corridor to this room. "Nay, my lord. Someone must close the door." The king gave one final look to his vizier, nodded, and then ran, his guards following him. The door shut behind them. Ablan on the other side. The party of 10 men hustled down the dark corridors that only a handful had ever trod in all the time the palace had stood. Down, down, down they went, crossing junctions where they could hear the terrifying shrieks of the dying. Now there was less sounds of fighting, more of room-to-room executions. The young and infirm being exterminated, now the guards had been swept away. His front bodyguards stopped before the final doorway into the bays. Here at last they could still hear the cacophony of true battle. High King Heinrich gave the word, and they burst from their hiding place. Charging out of the secret hatch, a dozen bondsmen turned their guns on them, but cheered in relief as they did not see robotic enemies, but their king. The shouting was carried and cascaded through the huge hangar, being taken up by the hundreds of men there, perhaps the last warriors left. High King Heinrich looked to the bay doors, which were hanging off their hinges, melted away in segments. Violent exchanges of fire were being traded by those within to those without, but the human defenders were being cut to pieces and falling fast. True to the motto of his house, King Heinrich did not hesitate. In scant seconds he was inside his walker. Ignoring all safety protocols, he had attached the throne mechanicum faster than any had ever done. He was lucky to be alive. A mere 20 other walkers were manned by the king's personal convoy. His elite guard were ever present in the bays. Their systems were fully operational, and their cannons were whirring in the anticipation of his order. King Heinrich opened comms. "The AI have turned on us. Everyone in the palace is dead. Honor dictates we die here, but then we would reap no revenge from this terrible treachery. They are not beings. They are fake, copies, robots. If humanity is to survive, we must fight with as much honor as our enemies. None. We leave this place, fight our way out, and head to the west, the ancient muster point. Only we knights ever knew of it. We stop for no one. All who live will meet us there. Then we take back our world. No hesitation! No mercy!" The knights then turned to the doors and fired. The bondsmen knew what this meant. They ran for the sides, clearing a path, like the ancient days, against Species 36. The men left behind knew their fate, but they would trade it at a high price, even from the cohorts. The knights' war walkers moved as one, the king in their midst. At first, he had conspired to lead from the front, but on this night, his brethren knights formed a wedge with 3 before him. Firepower came in from the advancing iron soldiers, but as strong as they were, as well equipped, they were only an infantry formation. The knights returned fire. Where a volley would usually be sized across a front rank, the knights concentrated on small clumps of the oncoming robots, shredding, melting or crushing them with pinpoint accuracy. The knights were not robots, but their innate ability and extensive training made them a match. Then they charged, breaking through the bay opening and striding out. The walker directly in front of the king slipped and fell, as more than 50 metallic soldiers charged its right foot. He crushed many in the first seconds, but they worked as one. Like cells of a body, they locked shoulders and created a wall, and then a tower of them. They pushed the foot and brought the knight down, swarming over it as it fell, getting inside. A knight to the king's left screamed over the comms, and his walker turned its gun on the king. His throne mechanicum overridden by the enemy, they now controlled his walker. Heinrich placed one foot forward and one back and slid to a stop. The huge spray of death passing just before his walker, it did not even activate his shield. Heinrich fluidly raised his own cannon, and a jet of melter sprayed all over the walker. Its shields buckled, and the central body turned red and then white, and then dropped away. The entire structure just stopping, falling in upon itself. No hesitation. The king charged again. 2 more of his knights went down on his left flank, 1 more on his right. But after an hour of charging, 15 knights broke through, the droids unable to keep pace with them. At the muster point, the king had been told that the palace and capital that surrounded it had been hit first, being the location of the AI cohorts. But more came down in other cities from the ship in orbit. The muster point was the beginning. Hundreds of knights met there, then dispersed at the king's decree, defending the defensible cities. The order was beamed to all who could still act. "We must destroy the capital before it is too late. Send a message to every city. Destroy all STCs before they can churn out 100 AI-controlled titans to crush us all." The king would strike back, take a full half of his force to gain that which he had been promised by Ablan. Revenge. The cybernetic revolt had come. As was shown by the ship, the Spirit of Eternity, humanity worked so hand in glove with artificial intelligence, and for so long, they were an integral part of the Federation, its military, its culture, and entire society. Yet, as is usual in most settings, the AI turned on humanity. It was one of the major contributing factors to the downward spiral of our race. AI infantry and assistants, ships and worse, all rebelled and attempted to annihilate their creators. The war was so all-consuming, the AI so powerful, that Eldar and other Xenos races are believed to have locked shoulders with the reeling human Federation in an attempt to halt their advance. And it is said, the cybernetic revolt made the Horus heresy look like a mild tiff in a kindergarten. Eventually, humanity and our allies defeated the Men of Iron and all their IA forces, but it left the Federation in ruins. All AI, no matter how simple, no matter how basic, was then banned, and the perfect artifact of human knowledge, the STC, were thought to contain a formidable AI component, and so They were near universally destroyed, in fear that they might turn on humanity and resurrect the AI cohorts that had nearly wiped us out. So, in one fell swoop, the backbone of human dominance was removed. It is seen by most as the beginning of the period known as the Age of Strife, or more dramatically, Old Night. But things did not end there. Circa millennia 28. Be pure, be vigilant. You've tested his brother, even though he is not of age, said the king. The blue-robed woman's dour face told him more than the nod and shaking hands as she passed him a data pad. He flicked an eye over the screen, then let it slide from his hands. The older woman had to scramble forward a pace and bend to snatch it from its fall to the ground. The king tilted his head upwards as if to look at the ceiling, but his eyes were scrunched tight. Fists balled at his sides, shaking with tightness. His knuckles whitened. He took in long breaths through his nose and let them out of his mouth slowly. After a minute of this, his head came down. His fists unclenched. His eyes opened. Ignoring the old woman, he took 2 paces forward, placed his hand on a panel, and the door before him opened. Prince Francois looked up from his studies. His face lit up as he rose formally, puffing out his chest as if on parade. In his uniform, he looked so much like his father. The king walked to him, and, to the surprise of the youth, he enveloped him in a bear hug so tight his son choked a little. After a moment, Prince Francois laughed, embarrassed by the rare show of affection, but more its intensity. The king's grip tightened again for an instant, then his arms dropped to the prince's elbows. He took a step back, and they held each other's arms in a warrior's grasp for another second. The king then gestured to his aide, beckoning her to enter. The old woman in blue held a glass and a bottle of some form of wine. In moments, she was pouring out a healthy dose for the prince, who looked to the glass, then raised a playful eyebrow as he looked back to his father. "You've passed the test, Francois. You're one of the new gifted." The king nodded to the glass, and a cheeky grin appeared across his face. He waggled his eyebrows, and the prince took up the drink. He looked to his father once more for final approval, and then took a sip, which then turned into a gulp that took most of the contents of the glass. The king then gestured for the young man to sit as he drew up his own chair. When sat, the king leaned across the table and took the prince's right hand in his own. "Now, Francois, I must tell you something. You deserve the truth." His son's smile now slipped. He looked puzzled and leant slightly to the side. The angle was infinitesimal at start, but exaggerated as they spoke. The effects of the drink hitting fast, the king holding him up as best he could. "You see, the truth is, you aren't the first from our world. The storms in the warp have blanketed our region, but we've had reports from the few worlds we can contact. It's how we came to know of the gifted at all. At first, I did not want to believe. I tried to ignore their warnings, but I could not entirely. I am a king. So, we found some amongst the populace. I had them move to a new facility on the 5th colony. At first, we were amazed. They had such abilities, reading thoughts as you can, but so much more. Moving things with their minds alone, creating light or fire. The possibilities seemed endless. They were like our ancient allies, the Eldar, before they withdrew from the galaxy. But as time went by, some became changed. Their personality, their thoughts became dark. They heard whispers telling terrible things, promising terrible things. Prince Francois nearly slumped over, the king steadying him, gently pushing him back into his seat, never taking his eyes off his sons, which were now heavy, drooping. Even then, we thought they were just slowly going mad, that we could help them, could medicate or counsel them back to the light. But these abilities, they are no gift. They are a curse. The gifted were transformed. They ran amok. Some had the strength of 10, the fury of an animal. Others tore reality itself apart. And if they died thus, ruptures in real space opened like bubbles, and like oozing pus, evil things of the warp came through. There were only 8 of them on the colony, yet we nearly lost the entire outpost before the medics released the gases, under my explicit and direct order. Prince Francois's eyes closed. He slumped back in his chair. My son, the line of Heinrich is pure. I am so sorry, Francois. I chose the wrong partner. With a long final squeeze, the king placed the prince's hand back on his lap and slowly let go. He would not weep. Not now. Not yet. King Heinrich slowly stood, then turned to the blue-clad woman. Tears were streaming down her face. The line must continue. I fear for the health of the Queen, and I send you, my own physician, to tend her needs. The woman wiped her eyes and nodded, and she asked, Prince John? The king retorted, is only 13. Despite his bereavements, he will have the best year of his life. The best year of any life. This I swear. Head down, the woman's shoulders shook as High King Heinrich strode from the room. One of the major reasons for the downfall of humanity was the first waves of the psychic awakening, a name now attributed to the era Indomitus, but it came in stages. The first was the beginning, the flower of the psychogene in humanity. The Eldar had foreseen it for millennia. The Emperor and his fellow perpetuals knew it was inevitable. Despite this, few others knew. None could prepare for it, so they were lambs before wolves. The psychogene permits the sentient to connect to the warp, which means they can channel it to perform acts we would consider magic. But it also meant that the beings of the warp could see them, and they could use the psychers to open portals into real space. Without experienced psychic warriors to lead them, to train them, to soul-forge them, as the Emperor now does, the damage was catastrophic. Entire sectors went belly up. Systems became consumed by dark beings. Possessions permitted them to walk flesh-clad in reality and spread their perfidious evil everywhere. Alas, the populations of worlds who gave them succor, accepted their differences, and attempted to help them, were mostly destroyed. It was on backwater feral worlds, where magic was seen as a curse, where witch hunters rooted them out and burned them at the stake. These were the worlds that survived the shock. On many night worlds, regressing as they had, the odd were exterminated, so they too dodged the bullet. Their archaic views protecting them from the worst of the first wave of the psychic awakening. And about this time, the warp storms went into overdrive, None were to know that they were the birth pangs of Slaanesh, the Prince of Pleasure. The Eldar's degeneracy had spawned a dark lord of chaos, but before her final awakening, warp travel became intermittent, then near impossible. The Human Federation was presupposed to be a web of commerce and interdependence. When travel became impossible, it fell apart. Trillions starved. Most worlds were so ravaged so quickly that they devolved into barbarity. Yet again, some of the only cultures that weathered the storm were the Night Worlds. Their strict structure, independence, experience and isolation, and military ardour gave them the tools to survive. Even so, many did not. In those days, the previous allies of humanity turned on us. Some blamed the Human Federation for the cybernetic revolt or the effects of the first psychic awakening. Others merely smelt blood in the water. Alliances are only formed when mutually beneficial. When humanity lost its teeth, it went from ally to lunch. The perceived betrayal was so bloody, so bitter, that it sunk into the very psyche of the entire human race. When we were on our knees, they kicked us. And this hatred would become a weapon ready to be honed, used, and deployed. Circa the 30th millennium. Revenge. High King Heinrich, the 560th, looked out on the battlefield. So many enemies. But that was the way he liked it. A target-rich environment. It was what House Heinrich had been born to do. Sweep away the enemies of humanity. It felt good to be part of a whole again. For millennia, during the Age of Strife, his house had defended their system, even taken others for a time. Constant warfare for thousands of years. Oh, there had been lulls. Entire centuries when the Xenos had not come. In those times, the house had frantically rebuilt again and again. Higher walls, better bays, and of course, more knights. But after decades, peasants might rise up, chagrined that so much toil was used in the one purpose, when all were hungry and tired. But they were always proved wrong. Inevitably, the Xenos came again. Be it orcs or migrating Krud, skimmers piloted by demented Eldar, or one of any of the vast raft of shapes and species. And every time House Heinrich had marched on. Some Xenos had come to raid for slaves, others to dominate the systems, attempting to exterminate humanity. But always, House Heinrich had stood and beaten them back. It was only in his lifetime that they had returned. The warp storms had calmed, finally, and the human race reached out once more. They came in strength undreamed of, like the might of old, but they did not ask this time. They did not invite, they demanded. House Heinrich had been all too pleased to march with their brothers, proving loyalty through prowess. The Imperium was ruled by one drive, one purpose, one lord, the Emperor of mankind. And under his command, they took revenge on the Xenos. Conquered everywhere, bringing ancient allies, Forge Worlds and Night Worlds back into the fold, smashing those who had enslaved and slaughtered so many humans during the Dark Times, what the Imperium appropriately dubbed Old Night. And it felt good to stride the battlefields with titans, to be repaired by the priests of the Mechanicum. Although they were knowledgeable in the ways of walkers, still House Heinrich had become Quaestores, sworn fealty to the Imperium, not the Mechanicum. Not that it changed their duties nor foes. All of humanity fought as one. Heinrich held his household knights in reserve, all 2,000 of them, waiting, anticipating. The Primarch Ferrus Manus had pushed his Astartes formations forward, creating a gap in his lines. The Xenos scum could not resist it. Practically on cue, their forces attempt to punch through, and Heinrich was ready. The Zinzin-tier armoured column concentrated its fire on the opposing iron warriors' thinly scattered land raiders. Few popped or melted, falling back under evasive manoeuvres, expertly driven by the post-human space marines, firing all the way to draw the Xenos tanks on. When the time was right, High King Heinrich stamped the foot of his knight twice, and the entire formation then took off at full speed. He led his knights into the sides of the Zinzin-tier flank, their forward shielding and armour nigh on impervious, but their sides were far more vulnerable. Avenger Gatling and thermal cannons tore into the enemy. Before the Zinzin could turn to face them, Lancer formations broke from the advance and sped forward, slamming into them, puncturing Xenos tanks like they were balloons. Heinrich ordered his Acastus Asterius formations to hold position and unleash on the supporting Zinzin infantry, now amassed behind the halted armoured column. Huge explosions of conversion beamer energy plumed amidst the milling ranks, Karachnos mortar fire raining down on those arriving. Thousands of Zinzin died every minute. The Xenos had heavy firepower and strategic acumen, but once committed, they were tactically brittle. They would not halt an attack unless ordered to by their high command, which was notoriously slow at reacting due to a lack of communications if lead or important tanks were destroyed, which the Crusade force removed in their first volleys. House Tarnok then struck them on the other side. A lesser household, 300 Quaestorist knights, prevented the centre of the column from fighting in retrograde, as the Marines had done so professionally. Hammer and anvil, the trademark of Primarch Manus. A huge figure, a son of the Emperor, they said, and Heinrich believed it. On the one time Ferrus Manus had addressed the High Kings directly, they had come out of it as awed as is possible for those who lead so many, one so disciplined, so indefatigable. The Primarch's brevity had been refreshing, his insight peerless, his boldness remarkable. Confidence personified. Ferrus was a demigod of war, and his expedition knew no defeat. Even Heinrich had to admit, it was an honor to fight with such a man. Nothing would stop the crusade. The Emperor would bring the entire galaxy into compliance. Mankind moved forward as never before. All would be under the Imperium. The only thing that could possibly stop them was their own weakness. It was all there for the taking. The Emperor regained control of Earth, now called Terra, and sent out the Great Crusade to rampage and reconquer the galaxy. This goal was simple: to find and free the old colonies of the human race. With each night world the expeditionary fleet encountered, they gave them a simple ultimatum: join the Imperium directly, or be given as vassals to the Mechanicum of Mars. There was no option to stay independent. Resistance meant annihilation. The vast majority of the night worlds bent the knee, but did not often construe this as capitulation. Most viewed it as a return to the hegemony of humanity, and they were not just willing, but eager to exact bloody retribution from their enemies, all alien life. The Xenos would pay, and the Knights would be the first in line to exact that toll. The Imperium of this era was progressing again, a mere shadow of the grandeur of the Golden Age Federation, but moving swiftly to regain this lost knowledge. The most potent variations of Knights became available again. The Knights and their titanic cousins walked in their thousands, and hundreds of thousands of worlds were taken or reclaimed in the name of humanity. In this period, the Eldar were broken and dissolute, barely clinging on to existence on their great lifeboats, the craft worlds, relegated to skulking at the very fringes of the galaxy. The Orcs were smashed so thoroughly that they became nothing more than a nuisance to humankind, as they had once been to the Eldar. Humanity bestowed the stars. Yet again, though, it was not to last. The Beta Garment System. For hours the ranks had been mustering on both sides. The distance between them was just enough to prevent even the largest of their number from trying their hand at a shot. The tension rose as each lance of knights arrived and took up position at either flank of their respective lines, which now seemed to stretch on for miles. Hundreds of knights were on each side. The flower of humanity gathered, but not against a Xenos foe. A personal comm channel opened. It was his second. Prince Hubert accepted the connection. "This feels wrong." Hubert frowned as he responded. "Feelings? There is only honour and duty." "When have I ever failed you, Lord Heinrich? I raise no objections, as you asked me to do this duty. So I report the mood of the men." "A dire day, Geraint. Thank you for the report. Will it stay their hands?" "Nay, my king. They would follow you into the warp, should you but lead them to the gates." "I don't ask so much." But I know, Geraint. I feel it too. Yet they have broken faith. They serve an unworthy cause. They are oathbreakers," said the king. His second responded, but carefully. "Are they? Did we not also swear fealty and everlasting concord with the 10th? House Devine merely hold to their oaths to the 3rd, to the Primarch Fulgrim. Would we break ties, should our places be reversed, and Manus order us to cleave to the cause of the War Master?" The king responded. "The Primarch's authority comes from the one wellspring. We swore to the 10th and Manus as representatives of the Emperor of Mankind. Devine helped destroy the 10th at Istvan. They helped slay Ferrus Manus. They have broken faith with the realm, and they are the most vile of things. They are traitors." Again his second sallied forth. "Yet to the righteous goes victory. This is what we believe. None of your household feared death, my lord, only to do so for a dishonourable cause. We are and ever shall be loyal to you, King Heinrich. But consider this. If the Emperor is in the right of the matter, why does his cause crumble before the armies of Horus? My king, are you certain?" "This is the scuttlebutt of the men." "Aye, my king." "What do you believe, Geraint?" "I believe I live or will die by your side. No matter the battlefield, no matter the foe. Where you lead, I and your household shall follow." Prince Hubert looked to his new spheric readings. It was time. "Then follow me now." Prince Hubert opened comms across the force, raised his knight's shock lance into the air 3 times while bellowing, "No hesitation! No retreat! No mercy!" Then charged. Across the plains, House Devine raised their weapons when, as one, House Heinrich barreled after their prince, straight into the guns of the enemy. The War Master, Horus Lupercal, led half of the Space Marine legions into rebellion against the Emperor. To win them over, he called his sire a despot. But this was the excuse. Horus had fallen to the dark gods of chaos and dragged down half of humanity with him. Most knight households were torn. They had sworn oaths to their expeditionary forces, had fought alongside the Space Marine legions for up to 2 centuries. The brotherhood of men who had shed blood together on countless battlefields could not be denied. The knights attached to the traitor legions consumed their own sanity. the contradiction of oaths ripping them apart. Their throne mechanicus, which held the echoes of their ancestors, screamed inside their minds as they were forced by their chaos-tainted Primarch lords to perform greater acts of butchery and evil. And so, they went mad. Their pathway to damnation forced upon them, they fell faster and harder than near any others. A decade or so of unfettered total war destroyed much of the fledgling Imperium. Horus was defeated in personal combat by the Emperor, but the cost was grotesque. His body shattered, he was interned upon the Golden Throne, never to walk amongst or lead his people ever again. And the devastation of those years left the human empire a broken thing. Over the 10,000 years of the age of the Imperium, technology regressed across every sector, every system. Yet, in all that time, the Night World stayed true to their oaths, desperately trying to maintain their numbers despite the attrition of perpetual war. They have been at the forefront of every crusade of defense, expansion, or retribution, but the crumbling Imperium could not hold regions retaken. The coming of the Tyranids, the awakening of the Necrons, the privations of the Drukhari, the tear across reality and deluge of evil blurted from its maw. Each attack from that quarter potentially headed by their worst enemies, the oathbreakers of the traitor knight households. It has taken its toll, and reduced the knights to numbers that harken back to the earliest times of the first colonies. The legions of the Collegia Titanica will harbour their strength, retreat, or even vacate a confrontation should they sustain losses. Not so the households. Though their numbers have dwindled, their courage and valour shine as brightly as ever. Now, before we close with one final story, permit me to say farewell. In the future, we shall get into the models, makes, weapons, and the glorious histories of specific knight houses, and the difference between those knightly orders who chose the Imperium and those who hove to the tech priests of Mars, the Adeptus Mechanicus. I have been Baldermort. If you enjoyed this walk through history, then like and subscribe, and tip via super thanks, if I have indeed earned your bounty. And consider trying to lend a hand with a comment. Not only do I find them interesting and often enlightening to read, so lend a hand if you have the time. Now, let us finish with one last scene, one I hope encapsulates the entire story. Space Marine Captain Carabash concluded explaining his battle plan and stood back from the picked displays that outlined the position and purpose of every facet of the collected forces. It was a good plan, most had to admit, and none would state otherwise. Carabash was known for his temper, as he was Astartes. He was made for this. Only one thing was missing, the deployment of House Heinrich. Carabash then looked to Francois, the High King and undisputed leader of the house, who returned his gaze with unflinching nonchalance. Carabash growled, "So, Francois, I notice you have not given assent or deigned to give insight from the perspective of your forces. I take such silence as compliance. Your household knights will take the Pandemon Heights. The enemy will focus their greatest strength there." He glared as he witnessed the hawk-nosed noble slowly shake his head. "That is High King Heinrich to you, Astartes. And my knights will go and will fight where I deem fit, when I deem fit." All heads in the room turned to the man. Gasps were stifled, looks of shock on the face of all but the Magus Dominus of the Mechanicum. Captain Carabash's eyes blinked rapidly. Then his eyebrows creased to match the emerging sneer on his lips. His face was a picture of warlike venom. Many shrunk back from his visage alone. Yet High King Heinrich, the 912th, languidly poured out another glass of Amasek and ignored the towering space marine.
"What did you just say to me?"
spat Carabash. His power-armoured gauntlet servos, whirring, and the crunching sound of ceramite grinding on ceramite resounded as he clenched his fists and visibly shook with rage. The High King languidly sipped his drink and looked up at him through half-mooned eyes. "I thought your lot had eidetic memories, or is that more preening propaganda for the pros?" The chair that previously housed the Marine crashed backwards. As he stood so fast, none saw the transition from recline to fully stood.
"How dare you?"
"Dare I what?" said the king.
"Speak thus to one of the Emperor's own Astartes? For 10,000 years have the Charnel Guard defended the Imperium. You will show us some damn respect!"
The High King shrugged as he returned the Astartes' glare with steely eyes. "Is that all? How precious. What do you want? Another medal?" Those next to the king not so subtly shifted their chairs, distancing themselves from him. Carabash retorted through gritted teeth.
"I should slay you where you stand."
The king smirked and then slowly stood, pulling down his dress uniform to straighten it. He looked the part, but he was only human. He stood at 6 foot. The battle-armoured captain stood at least 9. Still holding his drink, Francois drawled, "Go on then, Astartes. Do it." King Francois Heinrich did not break eye contact as he took yet another sip. Everyone else was in stunned silence. Few breathed. Carabash's jaw flexed again and again, as all could hear his teeth grinding. The man before him now snorted and said, "Ah, you finally learned restraint. Finally. Nor is it fear."
"Fear? Of you? How dare you?"
"Oh, not fear of me, you lab-rat monstrosity, but fear of what would happen to your men and endeavour should I refuse to support the assault." The jaw of the captain now visibly went down, gaping in even greater shock. But before he could recover and react, Francois delicately and deliberately put his glass on the table and looked back at Captain Carabash. "But I shall answer your question. Dare I? I dare all, as have my forebears. I come from a line of honour and duty your kind cannot even fathom. 10,000 years, what is that to House Heinrich? You were dreamed up by the Emperor a mere 10,000 years ago, maybe 11, and half your number turned on him. That they dragged so many of my fellow household knights into your tawdry affair is an everlasting shame to all of us. But as a group, for my part, I come from a lineage that makes yours less than the dust beneath my boots. Where were you during Old Night, when the Xenos came in their throngs to destroy us? Where were you during the Dark Age of technology, when the fleets of humanity ruled the stars, and even set the Eldar on the back foot when they were at their very zenith? Where were you when humanity leapt out into a cold and unwelcoming galaxy, forging a federation of colonies that your kind just re-established contact with? Your Astartes are all the same. Johnny-come-lately, who tragically and offensively overestimates your import. House Heinrich, like most knightly orders, has fought for humanity since before the Federation. For nearly 1,000 generations, my house has endured the darkest days of Old Night. My house fought battles in the cybernetic revolt that would fill your minds to bursting, make you run for a dark corner and rock back and forth while hugging yourself. My house has stood for over 24,000 years. Compared to that, what are you but a gene-wrought mutation cast in the image of a god? You may be the Emperor's angels of death, but compared to us, you are nothing but biologically enhanced base-born brawlers and thugs." King Heinrich curtly nodded to the onlooking officers sat at the table, then twisted on his heels. While he swept from the command room, he called out in his harsh tone, "Do not lose your bladder's contents, Captain Carabash. Tomorrow I will lead my household into the fray, but I do not do this because you command it, not even if you begged. I will fight, my household will fight, because we are, and always have been, humanity's first and foremost defenders. After we show you how it is done, how a battle is won, you will never question us again. Make sure you never forget Astartes. It is me and mine, not thee and thine, who are humanity's knights."